What has been the most surprising thing, thinking back over the last month or so, because this has been pretty quick in terms of the onset, what's been the most surprising thing to you in this whole state of affairs?
I think probably it's just how we have been dealing with the unknown, how we have been dealing with the fact that there's no cure for this. The cure for it is rest, relaxation, avoidance, and even in my case, where you do everything the way that you're supposed to do it, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not, that you're going to be exempt from catching COVID-19. I think what's most surprising is to some people, not me, but to some people, what's most surprising is the fact that there's people that completely ignore it, blow it off, the social distancing, and continue to do their own thing. It's not surprising to me because I just think that no matter what, or no matter where you go, there's going to be that element of the population that just feels as if they're invincible, or as if they're only concerned about themselves. And so the focus to me is on those people that are doing what they need to do, the people that we need to take care of, but not necessarily micromanaging all of those other folks that are out there doing what they very well know is wrong when it comes to not coming up with the appropriate social distancing. But what's surprising to me, and I'm really happy to see, is there's no longer reluctance for people to call out other people that are being irresponsible. And I think that, not to get into a military state here by any means, but certainly we're talking life and death. And we're talking not necessarily a smoking gun when it comes to something that's really obvious. We're talking about something that's invisible. And because of that, you don't know, I don't know, and the people that are not doing the social distancing or trying to remain open, considering themselves essential when they're not essential, you're not doing anybody a favor. You're definitely not doing yourself a favor with regards to that. So really, to put my finger on one thing, Phil, that is surprising to me, the thing that would pop out for most folks would be, how wonderful it is that, our heroic hospital workers, our first responders, the people that are keeping things up and running, that traditionally would be the thing that surprises people the most. That doesn't surprise me because I know what we're capable of doing. I'm thrilled that that's happening and that they're just validating what I've believed all along, that this is the greatest place in the world to live.
Yeah, I've said that over and over again on this show. I mean, in Western New York, that's one of the things that really attracts people to this area or brings them back if they've moved away is, there's nothing like Western New York in terms of the people. This is not just a point on the map. This is a community, and the community is comprised of people that, everyday life, somebody might cut you off in traffic and you kind of give them a dirty look, but when the chips are down and when somebody needs help, there's no better place to be, and I think you just put your finger on it. People step up and they help out. There's just nothing like it that I've ever experienced, and I've lived in other areas. There are good people everywhere, but in Western New York, there's a lot of character. There's a lot of character, and people really help. You've had the virus now, officially, you've recovered. Does that mean that you cannot have this again, or you're immune? And can you be a carrier of it in the future? Can you be someone who can give the virus to someone else? How does that work?
Well, I think the assumption, and I think that to me is probably one of the biggest failures that we've had so far, is the lack of information that's coming out. It started in China. There's been months of data. We're not hearing a lot of solid science with regards to whether or not you develop the antibodies. There's the assumption, the presumption, but we really don't know. We've heard that if you have contracted COVID-19 and recovered, that you've developed the antibodies for it. That's why they're developing a test to see whether or not you have developed that. Then just yesterday, I saw a report saying, well, they don't know if you develop the antibodies or not. You might be able to unfortunately get reinfected if you come in contact with it again. I think what we really need is the good, solid science on that. That information really, at least in my opinion, for us to get fully functional as a society, that information needs to be validated and brought to the front as quickly as possible. That includes the tests, not only to say whether or not you tested positive, which we try desperately to get as many of those done as possible, but it's not as easy as just, stick out your tongue, you have it. So the testing that needs to be done to say you were positive, the testing that needs to be done to see whether or not you had converted, and then the good science to say, yeah, you know what, you've developed immunity and we know that it's good for a year, or you've developed an immunity and you're going to be healthy and never have to worry about COVID-19 again. So the science isn't there, so nobody can tell me that. I don't have any information that you have, and I think that there are a lot of people out there saying things that maybe don't have necessarily the scientific knowledge or the scientific research to validate that just yet.
I guess that comes under the heading of we learn as we go, and like so many other things, and which brings me to my next point. The process of reopening and getting back to normal, has there been talk about that within the county, and at what point do we kind of turn the corner? Do you have a feel for that?
My personal feel for that, and I can tell you at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level, they're trying to figure out what's the best way to do that. It's not a one-size-fits-all, unfortunately, because there will remain some areas that are still hot pockets with regards to this, and it's not something that's just going to go away. It's going to be there, and you want to try and figure out what's the most delicate balance. I'm guessing that the way that when we start to ramp things back up, in my mind, I look at it as I would a fire chief when it comes to reopening a scene after a car accident or whatever. You don't just automatically open up the floodgates and everything's back to normal. You have to have some systematic way of doing it. In my opinion, what you'll probably see is a reverse of the closed down orders that came about. So remember, it was reduced to 50%, then it was reduced to only 25%, then it was nobody unless you're essential. So I'm thinking that as they work with not only the business community, but also governmental officials, and everybody has to get together to talk about it, I think what you'll see is a reopening, but you'll see a reverse of the actual closures that took place.
Now, one of the first people that I worked with in this business was your dad. How is your dad doing, Danny Neaverth Sr.?
Dan Sr. is doing great. He was phenomenal throughout the course of especially after I had tested positive and my residence was on lockdown. He called me to the point of like every day being very annoying with regards to what I needed. So here you had a senior citizen who was supposed to be basically staying out of harm's way, period, locking themselves, and he's trying to take my order for Tops or Wegmans as to what I needed.
Right.
He's doing great.
I hear he's social. He's keeping separate. He's keeping back 6 feet from the mirror. I hear. He basically doesn't, that's his separation. And I think he fired the guy who's supposed to kill all the insects and pests around the house. He told me he was just coughing into the corners.
That's his way of dealing with a lot of different things. I can tell you that he is doing daily puppet shows and sending them to his great-grandchildren. He's no longer working in radio. He was a victim of COVID-19 and is no longer doing a radio show. So he's working his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren with some of his antics. And they, as a result of that, hope that more than anybody, that society gets back to normalcy again, so that Grandpa doesn't keep bothering them with some of these video clips that he's sending them.
Well, I've always told him he has a terrific face for radio, and so at one of these days we'll have him on the TV side of it, just because I know his personality will shine through, and if the cameras can take it, we're going to have a good time. I think that's it. Is there anything else that you want to tell the people about what we're going through now and social distancing, and from your point of view with emergency services, what they should be doing now at this point and looking forward to.
Well, I'd like to say that other than those that didn't really take this serious, a vast majority of folks in Western New York took this serious, and as a result, we did manage to, and hopefully will continue to manage to flatten the curve. There are no individuals that are more grateful for the flattening of the curve than the first responder community, those folks in hospitals, hospital administrators, nurses, doctors, everyone, the staff that keep the lifeblood of those hospitals going, the janitorial services, the changeover. There's no one no one person that is more grateful to the flattening of the curve, I think, than those individuals. We have a great community. We talked about it earlier on the show here. We'll get through this. We've gotten through a lot of other things, but we do it as a team. We don't do it as an I. We do it collectively together. Hopefully from this we'll learn and we'll make some things better. So as my message to the community is keep up the great work, keep pushing forward, keep the head up, and if you're not to this point a part of the solution and maybe are a part of the problem, you might want to reassess and do everything that you possibly can, because you might be the one person or the group of people that are keeping us from getting life back to normal.
Okay, Danny Neaverth Jr., Emergency Services Coordinator for Erie County. Thanks very much, Danny. Stay healthy, and we will talk to you again about this. This is a very interesting conversation. I'd like to thank Erie County Emergency Services Coordinator Danny Neaverth Jr. for being my guest on this Big Picture. It certainly gave me an opportunity to learn a lot about what's going on around us that I didn't know before. Thank you for watching The Big Picture. And as always, thanks for watching WBBZ-TV. Our hope here is that you get something from us, your hometown, local station, that nobody else can or will offer for you, for Western New York. See you next time on The Big Picture.